Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Systems and Workflow Magic podcast. I am your systems and workflow BFF and guide, Dolly DeLong. And if you are joining in on YouTube or listening in on the podcast, I'm really thrilled and honored that you are here, my friend. Thank you so much. So, if you have been keeping up with the series live, like as these podcasts and YouTube episodes have been launching live, you should know that I am in the middle of a series all centered around the topic and theme of launching, specifically just peeling back the curtain of like the different puzzle pieces of what you should consider if you were wanting to launch for the first time, or let's say this is your 100th launch and you're wanting to continue to refine your launches. It's always good, I believe, it's always good to know how to best refine and how to best optimize and tweak and strategize for your next launch. Because let me just reiterate, no launch is going to be the same, and there's no blueprint for like this, like every single launch. Like have to you have to play around. You have to give yourself permission to play, as my friend Sarah Weiss would say. So, today's guest is a new online business friend, Michelle Pontvert. I hope I pronounced your last name right. Michelle is a life first business strategist and founder of the Business Chic Shop, where she sells streamlined solutions to simplify growing a business around your real life circumstances. She's also a neurodivergent, multi passionate entrepreneur juggling two businesses with being a hands on mom while living in Paris, France. So, Michelle, welcome to the podcast. Did I leave anything out?
No, thank you so much for having me. I've been really looking forward to this. This is going to be fun.
I'm really excited, and I hope I pronounced your last name correctly.
Beautiful. It's very tricky because in French we would say Pontvert, you
Uh-huh.
swallow most of the letters, but Pontvert is beautiful too because then
Okay.
people know how to spell it.
Well, thank you so much for your grace. And everyone who may not be watching, Michelle is actually based in Paris, France. So it's most likely the afternoon there for her, and it's morning here for me. And so this is like an international episode. I'm so excited about this, Michelle. And I'm yesterday we recorded an episode for Michelle's podcast, which I will be sure to link that in the show notes to her podcast, so you all can connect with Michelle. Once you get to know her, you're just gonna absolutely love her. So I wanted to just like dive right in. I am so excited that Michelle, you're specifically in this launch series because you're going to be talking about the concept of not so live launching, which when you presented that topic and that idea to me, I knew I wanted to dive into that because I have listeners who fit the following criteria. I'm just like going to list it out because I have like many different types of listeners, but these are the three main types. A lot of my listeners are brand new business owners who are literally brand new to the concept of launching. They've never launched a digital product or a service before, so it's all new to them. Or they are in the messy middle of their own businesses. They're figuring out all the puzzle pieces of systems, workflows, SOPs, and they honestly need help understanding how launching fits into that, because they may want to learn how to optimize a digital or create a digital product to launch and market well. And like, another added layer to all of this, a lot of my listeners are moms and business owners too. So the idea of not so live launching intrigues me as a mom of two, because like being a full-time mom is like a full-time job within a full-time job within a full-time job. And then having a business, and like you have two full-time businesses that you are doing other businesses as well, launching within those businesses, that can be stressful. So just having your expertise on the podcast and on the YouTube today, on this channel today, I'm really excited to get your perspective and about like what you mean about not so live launching.
Yeah, so it's a term I guess I've coined myself because launching typically is like a set period of time when we're promoting an offer, whether that's a digital product, a course, or even like a service, just basically putting the word out that we've got something available for sale. And typically that's done live with emails going out that often people are writing pretty much the day of,
Yeah.
and preparing a lot of those elements live, but also including showing up live to add to that sort of excitement about your promotion. So that can look like hosting a live launch event, something like a webinar or a challenge, showing up for videos, doing reels, basically being really active and present to help encourage people to engage with your launch. And I think that's wonderful. I think it's the norm for a reason because it is really effective to show our faces, to show up and really show and demonstrate our excitement, our enthusiasm for our offer. But as you said, Dolly, that is not always realistic or possible for a lot of us entrepreneurs, particularly people like me, basically, people who are parents to young kids who have unpredictable schedules, people who are in alternate time zones from their ideal clients. As you said, I'm in France. A lot of my audience are in Australia. I'm an Aussie originally, so I still get a lot of Aussies, or in America. And showing up live for those time zones is really tricky sometimes because it's the
Yeah.
middle of the night or the middle of school drop off. So timing can be really tricky. And then the sort of third layer I found really challenging for me personally, and that my audience also really resonates with, is I'm neurodivergent. My brain works a little differently, and I actually don't show up my best put on the spot to do things live. I do really well when I can have some space and some time to really get myself into the right frame of mind and communicate in ways that work best for the way my brain functions. So, kind of those three things combined really led me to try and think outside of the box of how to still show up and offer my things in a container that's exciting, that's relevant, that has all the good parts of launching live, but took away some of those elements that made it kind of inaccessible for me as a human. And that's where this concept of not so live launching kind of was born, is creating still a launch that is timed, still something that is live for my audience, but is prepared and curated in advance and optimized so that I don't have to show up at a certain time, specifically live on video or for challenges and webinars at a specific time, which doesn't work for me and my life and my brain.
I love that so much. We have so much to unpack because everything you were saying, I was like, wow, like I want her to unpack this and this and this. So, is it okay if I ask you a very specific question?
Please.
Okay, so when I'm glad that you brought up the different layers because
Hmm.
like I like to remind my listeners like not everything is one dimensional. Like everybody is multifaceted, multidimensional. Like we have to consider our personalities as women. We have to consider our hormones and
Hmm.
like with launching sometimes. I brought that up several times. I bet my listeners are sick of me saying really have to consider like your bodies and your
Hmm.
hormones. But the third layer, you spoke about how your brain works differently. You
Yeah.
brought up the term neurodivergent. Can you unpack that even more? Like, how did you discover that about yourself? When were you like? When was that clicking in for you?
Yeah, so neurodivergence is something that has always been part of my life. It's basically that my brain functions a different way from quote unquote typical brains. Um, but it took me a long time, even into adulthood, to figure out why it was different and what was different. So it was actually thanks to my son and going through his diagnosis journey that I had words to put to some of the struggles I've always had. And I actually finally got my official stamp and diagnosis this year, which I'm very excited about, which is a whole other story. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, for a long time, I've realized I didn't learn the same way as other kids in school. I don't process information the same way. I have a lot of sensory sensitivities that make just like living in the world a higher taxing activity for me,
Yeah.
but also means that my brain works in really different ways. Something I talk a lot around on our podcast, Marketing Like a Mother, is actually the way I process information is kind of different than most of the world. I process all the details first and then compile that into a solid idea of what something is, while the rest of the world kind of does more top down thinking. You understand a concept and then you get more granular. There's lots of different sort of components to that, but basically it means just from waking up in the morning, my brain functions a little differently. And for most of my life, I just thought I was broken or different or there's something wrong. And finding out that that was a thing, that
Yeah.
there's words for this, there's other people like me, has really opened me up and has been a big journey in my business to not only understand and embrace, but accommodate the way that my brain and brains like mine work, which is different than the norm, but doesn't mean it's
Yeah.
wrong. They're just different.
Well, I am just thank you for letting me ask that question. I know it's very,
Yeah,
like, personal, but,
of course.
I'm hoping listeners I hope as you're listening, as you're watching, you're hearing, like, there is a way to launch, like, Michelle is sharing, like, like, relate I'm finding words right now is hard for me. If you relate to this as well, if your brain works a different way and you want to learn like how to let's say like how to optimize your personality, how to optimize your brain for
Mhm.
launching, like I'm so thrilled Michelle is here because she's gonna like help like showcase like it is possible for you. You just have to think of launching it a different way and
Yeah.
optimize it to like fit your personality. So I just had to reiterate that. So,
Oh, yeah, it's
yeah,
that's the key because if it feels difficult, if it feels
yeah,
like you're trying to shove a square peg in a round hole, most
yeah,
of the time you avoid doing it, and it's hard to be a business without actively selling, without putting on promotions, without launching, so I think it is one of those puzzle pieces that's really important to figure out kind of as early as you can, because
yeah,
it's something you can't avoid if you want to be a business owner, but something that isn't always evident if your brain doesn't happen to work the way that everybody else's does. That if the typical way of doing things isn't clicking for you, it doesn't mean you should just give up. It just, you need to get a little more
yeah.
creative.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and, if you have, sorry, I keep on, like, bringing up other episodes, but this just,
Mm,
like, keeps on taking me back to my interview with Sarah Weiss, who's also a part of the Systems and Workflow Magic Launch Bundle, which you are a part of. She said, like, her business journey has taught her so much about it's been, like, a self-reflection journey, and, um, being online has exposed so much of her personality to herself, like, it's like opening up just more facets to her to discover self-discovery journey, what she
mm,
named it, and, it was very interesting to hear her explain it like that because it's so true, like, when you open yourself up to the world not in like in a not open up yourself like in a relationship with a person like your husband your partner but like open your business up and you're exposing it to the online space and then you're exposing yourself with this product to launch like that can be not only vulnerable but also like how is your personality going to react to this whole process and so it's really good to continue to know yourself and know like what works best for you. And so, this is also a reminder to my listeners who are in the beginning stages of their business and you're interested in launching, you're interested in like marketing for a launch. All those terms that I like to throw out at you. Give yourself some space and time and lots of grace as you continue to learn more about your personality and then learn also more about how to optimize your business with systems and workflows. So you all know I like to go on tangents and just I just really want you all to know like just take it one step at a time. So Michelle, thank you for sharing that. Really that means a lot that whenever people share something about themselves, thank you so
yeah,
much.
of course.
Let's talk about then the layer of you had mentioned 3 different layers. Layer of your personality and then layer
Mhm.
of, being really active and like timing can be tricky. Can you talk more
Mhm.
about that?
Sure, definitely. So, if you are launching something that isn't just for people who live right next to you in your same
Yeah.
town, in your same city, in your same area, time zones can be a really big component to how well your launch goes because not everybody's engaging with your content, with your events in the same capacity. Showing up for something in person at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. is a very different experience. And it's not surprising that when we extrapolate that to the online space, people show up really differently if they have to stay up late or even show up in their pajamas half asleep, or if they're, only able to engage on a replay because the event was during the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important if we are the host of something like an event for our launch to be really mindful that not everybody is able to show up in the same way throughout the day, but also not everybody has the ability to show up during the day. It could be the night, it could be school run, it could just not be a convenient time for them to engage. So I think as the host of an event, being a good hostess is to accommodate people where they're at. And particularly if you're in the online space, we can kind of assume that not everybody you're talking to is in the same place geographically. So, considering things like time zones by being thoughtful when you schedule your events, but also offering things like replays, having the option for people to see the times in multiple time zones. So, if you're, for example, hosting a webinar event at 8 p.m. Eastern, not everybody knows off the top of their head what that means to them. And particularly, I find our American listeners are not as accustomed to
Yeah.
understanding what time zones mean globally. So, giving just some anchors to people in your main areas that you serve. So, if you've got some Europeans, maybe putting like the English time zone, that's usually something we have a reference to, we understand as Europeans. Or in Australia, giving us a time zone, we always get forgotten. Or somewhere in Asia, just giving us a landmark sort of time zone when you're listing out your event, when you're sharing and promoting your event, gives a nod to say, yes, this is a time that suits me as the business owner, and maybe me and my American friends, or me and my European friends if you're based in Europe. But it gives a nod to say, but I did think of you in the other countries. And as someone who's lived abroad most of all my adult life and has operated a business entirely in a time zone different from my own clients and customers, it's been really lovely to see that people appreciate that. You feel seen, you feel understood, and you feel accommodated purely just by listing people's time zones. And
Mhm.
then again, that key piece of offering an option for people to catch up later if they can't show up, if it is the middle of the night, if it is just a really bad day, they don't have childcare. You want to offer that kind of flexibility for people to meet you where they're at, not force them to show up when it suits you. I think again,
Gotcha.
that's just being a good hostess of an event.
Can I ask a question about that?
Mm,
Because that's something that I will admit, like, I only like up until like last year, I was only considering like North America, United States as like the
mm.
time zones. And is there an app or like a website that helps you like that is your go-to app or website that you like to showcase with your like let's say you're hosting a webinar and then if you wanted to help convert over to a person's current time zone. Do you have a recommendation for people to use?
Yeah, I really like timezoneconverter.com.
Okay.
Very obvious title, but I like it because you can input multiple time zones and see them all at the same time. So if I say it's 7 p.m. Paris time, I can put in what time is that in London, what time is that in Sydney, what time is that in New York, and it will show me all at once. The other really easy solution for this, if even finding a new website, you can literally just Google 7 p.m. your time zone is what time in the time zone you're
Yeah.
looking for. And Google's really smart and will just give you the answer. So that's the other really quick way to figure it out.
I love that so much. And I mean, Michelle, like literally for my next launch, I'm going to be using timezoneconversion.com now. Just like, and putting it as a link in
Hmm.
on like the landing page of like, let's say I'm doing a masterclass or a webinar. That way people can easily see, okay, what time will it be for me? Because you're right, like, you wanna be a really good hostess and considerate and accommodate to your audience, and because it leaves a really good taste in their mouths. I have said this before, I don't know if I said this to you, Michelle, but I don't like the term "leave a good taste in your mouth." I wish that there was another, like, I wish that there
That's a
was
good
another.
impression, I guess.
Yes, I feel like I've told you that, but I can't think of any other term. So, okay, do you have any other suggestions for how to accommodate? So, you shared, okay, like, share replays or share,
Mhm.
like, the time zone piece. How else can we as, like, the the hostess, how can we accommodate to our audience and, like, still show up and serve them?
Yeah. So something I've taken to doing, and I actually have a mini course, it's only €9, about Not So Live launching, which is kind of this method I've used to prepare those events in advance. And something that's really lovely as the side effect of recording my webinars way before I'm going to actually have them go live, or pre recording my challenges is it gives me time to then offer things like notes or transcripts, have closed captions, other elements of accessibility, which not only help for accessibility when we have different needs, but also helps if you have an audience that's international,
Mm,
because we may not speak English as a first language. We
yeah.
may be having sort of sensory processing disorders where we struggle to understand information verbally and we need to read it. It also is really nice if someone is catching a replay, they may want to watch it on double speed so that they can get on with their day and catch up with everything else. And having the subtitles or the notes helps just make sure they've understood all the key pieces from that really valuable event that you've put on for them. So I found giving myself that little bit of extra buffer time before I show something to my audience allows me to layer in more of these accessibility features into things that otherwise would be quite tricky to figure out to do live there in person. So it's kind of like the secret benefit to doing things a little bit asynchronously, but I found it has a big, big impact. And then my other little piece I'm just going to shove in here is if you are offering replays, I would really encourage you to be generous with your replays. I know a lot of times there's this sort of idea of, oh, we only want a 24-hour window to watch a replay. And that puts a lot of urgency, a lot of like stress on the people who want to engage with your launch, but again, may not be able to show up. It may not be the weekend where someone else is in the world. It may not be their time off. They may not have capacity to sit down and watch your content that day. And I've found by just extending that replay window just a little bit, 48, 72 hours, it can still have that same urgency that encourages people to engage with your launch before the deal's gone and keep it really top of mind. But it just helps encompass all those different time zones really comfortably, encompass people where they're at in their lives, in their day to day, and again gives people who do need a little bit more time to process information, who might need to watch things multiple times, just that extra little bit of accessibility to give them space to do things in their own time. So that's my little soapbox moment.
Love that. Excuse me. Will you share with me the link so I can put it in the show notes about that training you talked about? You
Oh,
mentioned
sure.
that. Okay.
Definitely.
I'll put it in the show notes of the blog and of this podcast so that just in case you want listeners, you want that extra training from Michelle, you will get it. So, and it's only €9, which is awesome.
Hmm.
That's
It's
awesome.
because it's my baby. That's like my favorite topic. So I really wanted to make it super accessible.
I love it. Accessible. That look at that layer. Accessible.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay, so we talked about just like how to be accommodating, and then we talked
Hmm.
about then also how to work if your brain works differently, if your personality works differently, how to incorporate that in a not so live launching mentality. Is there anything else? I okay. I just have a question. I know I'm
Yeah.
like, how do you create then hype and excitement
Mm.
when you are I call what you just described earlier, I call that batching because I batch
Mhm.
record a lot of podcast episodes, blog posts for future launches. But then how do you do that anticipation excitement for
Mm.
for your audience when it's not live. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So just because we've prepared in advance, we've done our homework before we showed up to class,
Yeah.
doesn't mean that we have to take away that sense of urgency from our launch. So even if I've recorded a webinar or challenge 2 weeks before it's meant to go live, I don't have to start showing people until the date that my launch actually starts. And I can still have that sort of timed experience for the people going through the launch that has the urgency and the importance to kind of engage with the launch while the offer's live. It really just buys me as the host more time to prepare, more time to be intentional with preparing the assets, the like videos, the recordings, however you're going to put together your challenge in advance so that you can focus your energy during the launch, because we do want to show up during our launch times, on supporting people in real time, of giving feedback, of answering questions, of being engaged with people who are asking questions in your DMs or in any groups. And I found really kind of compartmentalizing the different elements of the launch to show up for the live quote unquote pieces ahead of
Yeah.
time. I'm really able to like focus all that energy on creating the very best assets I can for the launch, and then preserve my limited energy during the open cart window, during that actual like launch period when other people are engaging with my launch content, for me to engage with them, to me
Gotcha.
be as available as possible, because I can't do both those things at
Yeah.
once. I just don't have it in me, as the way my brain works, as the way my schedule works. I
Yes.
can't do both, and I would rather prioritize being as available as possible to people during that time to answer questions, to give them feedback. If they're working through something like a challenge, I want to really be there to hold their hand to go through that process. So I really like that, just taking off my plate the recording of the challenge pieces, the recording and preparing of the webinar piece, or whatever kind of event you want to put on, a little bit ahead has just helped kind of separate those tasks out and create more space during the launch itself. The other nice thing of preparing ahead is it makes it really easy to recycle those launch assets again and again. So, what I've found is if I've created a really great challenge, it's a shame that it never gets to see the light of day again. So,
Yeah.
because I've pre recorded it, I can be really intentional of maybe not mentioning my pitch until the end, so I can easily edit that out and swap it out for the next launch. So, I give myself almost permission to put more effort into the actual assets, those videos, those recordings, those whatever you're creating, because I know I'm making a longer term asset for my business,
Mm.
rather than putting all the pressure on me to show up and perform live every single time, when my energy can be variable, my mood, as you said, with your sort of cycle, you don't know what you're going to get that day. While
Yes.
giving ourselves a little bit more grace, a little bit more time to prepare, to be in the right headspace, to feel really good, you kind of end up getting a better product, I find, at the end, and something you feel really happy about using again and again.
So true. I'm so glad that you brought that up because, okay, just going back to remind listeners, watchers, like you may not necessarily have a giant team working for you. So when you see these launches online, remember like the highlight reel is shown online. So when you see the big business owners with like 8, 9, 10, I don't know, like a crazy amount figure of launch, which is great for them to keep in mind. Like they have a team of 10, 15, 20 people working for them, or they might have a team of 5 people working for them, and it's just you. And that
Mhm,
can be so overwhelming. It can be, it can bring up feelings of jealousy or
mm,
comparison, and you feel worthless because you're like, "Well, I can't keep up with XYZ. I can't have my own 10-figure launch," like, when in reality, like, your projected 4 even 5-figure launch is amazing for where you are in your business. So, I just wanna bring it back to perspective, like, you have to see where whoever you're comparing yourself to, where they are versus where you are, can you can launch. It's just takes a matter of like what Michelle is sharing, what other contributors have shared in this launch series. It takes intentional planning and then knowing your person, like it takes really knowing your capacity, and you
mm,
can execute or plan out an effective launch for your business? I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Michelle?
Oh, 1,000%. And I think it can be a huge disservice to us if we set the bar too high. We
Yeah.
inevitably fall short. So I really like to see it as launching isn't the goal. Like, that's not the point of a business.
Yes.
The point is to continue to grow, to continue to get more customers, to get better at doing your marketing and sales and customer service and delivering your offer. The goal isn't actually pulling off a good launch. The goal is to do it again and again and
Yes.
again and again. So we
Yes.
want you coming out of your first or next attempt at a launch in an okay place as a human so that you can go ahead and do it again. Because I find when I tried my first launch, I did try and follow kind of the script, the regular way of doing it. And it's really overwhelming, as you say. It's hard to live up to those standards and push yourself to do things that are not just uncomfortable, but sometimes not possible for you as an individual or as a solo business owner. And it can lead you to burnout, it can lead you to feel really bad, and can put you off launching again.
Yeah.
So I think it's almost like taking a bigger view of the whole process. And this is an exercise. We just need to build up our muscles, do repetitions, and we'll
Yeah.
get better and better as we do it more. And I really like taking that kind of longer view of we're just practicing. Like, none of this really, quote unquote, matters. What matters is that we get up and try again and we get better every time. So I think, again, taking this slightly less stressful version of launching can be a really nice way to start dipping a toe, start trying something out. And as you get better at things, as you're able to recycle more of your assets, as you're able to, get some confidence behind you, maybe you do want to sprinkle in more live elements because you've really mastered some of that behind the scenes stuff already.
Mhm.
But I think taking some of the pressure off having to be like Amy Porterfield on day one,
Yes.
it's just setting yourself up to be really disappointed. Why not be you day one and then try and do a little bit better next time and a little bit better next time? And just by practicing, you will inevitably see that you improve in whatever area you're trying at. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just an exercise in repetition.
Yeah, preach it, Mama Michelle. I love it. I love it. Well, I know we went over a lot, and as we wrap up, like, first of all, let me thank you again for coming on and sharing, like, this aspect about the not so live launching and sharing so many different golden nuggets with my audience. Thank you so much. And Michelle, I'm going to ask you several questions as we wrap up. Just like, how can people find you, connect with you, work with you? Let us know what our next step would be to working with you and finding you.
Yeah, so I'm pretty easy to find. I'm the only Michelle Pontvert out there. So I am michellepontvert.com. That's my website. I'm Michelle Pontvert on Facebook and Instagram. I'm not as great on Instagram. So if you do want to hang out with me, Facebook is usually the place to find me.
Okay.
And then I have a whole ton of free resources. I have a blog over on my website. Highly encourage you to check that out. And then on my email list, I share like all sorts of goodies. I really love on my email list. So if you did want to join there, I have actually a whole page of freebies. You can sign up and grab something. I do have a couple of things I think might be like really helpful starting places. So I have one which is a free guide of my unsticking tricks. This is when you have something you need to do and you're feeling just stuck and willpower isn't getting you to move forward. So 5 kind of out of the box ways to get you moving, get that momentum going again in your business. And they're really kind of different ways of just helping you get moving again. So encourage you to check that one out. That's on my website, michellepontvert.com/unstuck. That's maybe my favorite freebie I have out these days, but there's a whole ton of other ones there too.
Awesome. Well, I'll have everything in the notes of this specific episode for the listeners. And then, Michelle, do you mind sharing with everyone what you will be contributing to the Systems and Workflow Magic Bundle, the launch edition?
Definitely. So I have my simple sales system, which is built out in Notion. Notion is my favorite productivity tool because it's super flexible and really user friendly. So I know if you're not that techie, it sounds a bit scary, but I promise it's really approachable. And the sales system is basically a really easy way to put together the kind of marketing assets of your launch. So you can figure out basically, what are you selling? Fill in a little worksheet, and it populates for you automatically all of your sales page copy, your email copy, even your social media post copy, and you have templates and a schedule to figure out how are you actually going to share this around and get all of those assets going. It's kind of like shortcutting all of the writing and planning part of your launch. Again, I really want to get you just out there starting. So I think this is a really great way to sort of get those training wheels on and get going with launching. You can always customize from there, but it's a nice way to get started with launching.
I love it so much. Michelle, I'm so excited about your product. I'd share this with you on your podcast, but I don't, I want to start using or like learning more about Notion because I've heard a lot about it in the past year. So um, I'm really excited.
Oh, well, actually, one of my brand new freebies is a Notion 101
Oh,
class
wow.
for entrepreneurs. So on my freebie
Wow,
page,
I'm
you
going to
can find
go.
that as well.
Look at you. Wow. Okay, you guys. I will also like again, I will be sure to put everything in the show notes so that you can get all the freebies. And I'll be grabbing that Notion freebie as well. I'm excited. I had no idea. Okay, well, as we wrap up, everyone, if you again, I like as a repeat, if you want to check out the show notes of this YouTube video or the podcast episode, again, everything will be there and get on the wait list for the Systems and Workflow Magic Bundle. There's over 30 different contributors who want to help you out with the different systems, workflows, SOPs, the different puzzle pieces of launching so that it could be less overwhelming for you and more clear on what steps you need to take because again launching is like it's not like a one size fits all blueprint. It's multifaceted and it's wonderful, and like Michelle was sharing, like it's not about the launch, it's about you getting up and doing like just work, continuing to refine your business and continuing to show up. And so we want you to get excited about incorporating launching into your overall business and marketing plan and feel that confidence. So again, we're so excited about that you're choosing to be here to listen to this podcast episode, watch this YouTube video with us. And I'm excited to showcase a brand new episode next week. So stay tuned for that. Until then, have a streamlined and magical week, you amazing muggle, you. And I will talk to you all later. Bye.